Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. We're back with a talk video, and we are continuing the process of getting caught up on the items I couldn't dive deep into while I was traveling. So now we can tackle the least timely of those items now that it's a more opportune time within my schedule, since he's a conquest character and won't be playable for 2 more months. Taron Malicos, the dark side unaligned attacker from Fallen Order, one of the most iconic characters from the game that I think everyone is happy to see, and I didn't think we'd be getting until some future date. I thought with Jedi Knight Cal Kestis we were done for the time being with Fallen Order and Survivor characters, and I'm happy to be wrong. And as we typically try to do, we begin with what used to be the developer insights, where we're going to take a look at the attributes and some of the strategy tips. With the attributes, what we're looking at here is an attacker described as devastating with potent debuffs, 2 new effects that are going to boost his offense and Grand Arena Omicron character. Strategy tips, they emphasize utilizing Edge of Madness, which is going to be an important mechanic. The big thing here is Malicos being a potential Maul replacement with Lord Vader, which is actually pretty huge. It's been one of my ongoing issues with how the Maul team has been being picked apart from multiple directions. To have the opportunity to actually utilize that character as a leader, I think is great. And they do mark him for Seer Junda. So we have some work to figure out the optimal use cases, or even some conditional counters where does it make more sense to place Malicos with Lord Vader or Maul, or is Malicos a little bit more of a free agent? We have some specifics here to look at if he actually will be better than Maul or not. Edge of Madness is going to also reduce Malicos' defense, so we're going to want to protect him and keep him healthy from some burst attacks, which they specifically identify here. And now for the kit breakdown and analysis. The basic ability Dark Strike. Deal physical damage to the target enemy and gain 2 stacks of Edge of Madness, maxing out at 100 until the end of the encounter. The ability can't be countered, and Edge of Madness performs minus 2% defense per stack. So we already see some give and take in this kit. The can't be countered portion of this is pretty huge and pretty unique for a basic ability, as there are a lot of squads and counters these days. This is going to open up some work for the unaligned force users, and it will help protect Malicos as he attacks and Edge of Madness stacks up. The loss of defense with Edge of Madness could also introduce some modding strategy that we should think out as we go through this. Maybe we want to make sure there's a lot of defense secondaries on those mods to ensure that he has a lot of defense to lose. So he's starting from a position of strength as he gains those stacks of Edge of Madness. The first special, Vile Thrash, this is a cooldown of 3 and a Zeta ability. Physical damage to the target and gain riposte. This attack has plus 30% defense penetration, quadrupled if all allies are unaligned force users. If Malicos has at least 20 stacks of Edge of Madness, he takes a bonus turn, and for every 20 stacks of Edge of Madness, dispel them and gain a stack of Madness manifested until the next time he uses Die Whelp, is defeated, or the end of the encounter. If the ally in the leader slot is an unaligned force user, the cooldown of Die Whelp is reset, so it's going to be easier to use the second special. With Madness manifested, this is minus 40% tenacity per stack. Next time this character uses Die Whelp, it deals 50% more physical damage per stack, reduces the current max health by 15% for the rest of the battle stacking, except for Galactic Legends, and removes all stacks of Madness manifested. So there's a number of things here that suggest timing the specials is going to be crucial on this character. Getting the bonus turn or the cooldown reset of the second special are some pretty big incentives to waiting to that 20 stacks of Edge of Madness, but there's additional incentives to keep waiting to get those additional stacks of Madness manifested in order to get that extra damage and that health reduction. But there's going to be a balance. As we wait to use his specials, he will be easier to take out as he becomes more of a threat. And there are several conditions within this ability here, highlighting the Sirjunda squad placement. This seems pretty important, almost to the degree where I don't know if I think the Lord Vader placement makes all that much sense, because one of the things that Sirjunda is going to excel at is helping to keep Malicos alive so that he can get all of those effects of the stacking Edge of Madness, the stacking Madness Manifested. Sirjunda squads at 3 stars gear 11 are fantastic at bringing up those lower gear characters and making them viable with the current game. If you see my Grand Arenas, you see me using Sirjunda like that all the time and taking out relic squads. This is just going to elevate what Sirjunda already does, which is already excellent. With the second special, Die Whelp, this is a cooldown of 6, and it's one of the Omicron abilities. Deal physical damage and AoE inflict vulnerable and stun the target. If the target had defense down, this stun can't be resisted. And if the target enemy is in the leader slot, increase their cooldown by 1. So the AoE inflict vulnerable is the most crucial part of this ability because of how it synergizes with the unique abilities, which does mean you'll probably want to use this ability as soon as possible. So keep all that in mind in a moment. The Omicron ability is a Grand Arena Omicron. Deal additional AoE true damage and inflict buff immunity and healing immunity onto the target. If the ally in the leader slot is an unaligned force user, Malicos gains 20% crit damage and offense stacking. The Omicron turns into a meaningful damage boost, especially the stacking offense and critical damage. But I think its import will depend on how often this ability actually gets used in a match. If it's only once or twice, this Ami's effect may be negligible. This is one I would wait on until we see some of the actual testing of the character in the kit. Okay, so the unique ability, Echo of the Fallen Order, a Zeta ability, and an Omicron ability. This is a big one, so get ready. I may have even should have started with this ability, as I sometimes do start with unique abilities when I do these breakdown and analysis. Okay, all allies have plus 30% crit chance. If all allies were unaligned force users at the start, while Malicos has at least 1 stack of Edge of Madness, whenever he scores a critical hit, all other allies gain 5% crit damage and offense stacking until the end of the encounter. Now this is why I highlighted the inflict vulnerable with the second special Die Whelp. Vulnerable guarantees the next hit is a critical hit if possible. So using the second special early and often means Malicos has more opportunities to stack that crit damage and offense, and this also increases the synergy with Sirjunda since there's already so much stacking damage from Sirjunda's leadership that this just makes them so much more offensively viable. Even though they already were offensively viable, this just increases the threat level of what a Sirjunda squad is going to do. If you don't have a Sirjunda squad, you need to get one. This is going to be one of the most important squads in the game. Whenever an ally is inflicted with healing immunity, they cleanse it and gain damage immunity. Whenever they are inflicted with stun, they cleanse and recover 30% health and protection. Very interesting conditions here. Conditions that we can exploit. This is a big condition to either be choosy with how we use the unaligned force users on offense, or to not forget these conditions when we attempt to counter it on defense, because this is basically going to neutralize a number of squads, either offensively or defensively. The second Grand Arena Omicron, enemies defeated by allies can't be revived. This effect persists if Malicos is defeated. This is basically adding one of the most desirable portions of Gas Lead, which means this unique is crazy powerful. This Ami is going to be a must-have, especially because this one doesn't have an unaligned force user condition. We could potentially plug Malicos into any lineup to add anti-revive mechanics. This is kind of crazy. It has the potential that teams that couldn't beat Night Sisters because of the revive mechanics may now be able to beat Night Sisters just by adding Malicos as a 5th, even if Malicos is otherwise horrible on the squad and he just dies off. Especially as Night Sisters become more of a threat with the addition of Marin. It means even if you don't have a Syr Junda squad ready, because Syr Junda or Kelkestis, you don't have the Kairos, you could just take your Malicos, and this could be how you use your Malicos. Malicos becomes a Marin counter, and you just throw it onto like troopers and make it possible for troopers to counter Marin again, potentially. Obviously, we would need to test that out, but that's the promise of what this kind of Omicron can do. And that's just the universal portion of this Omicron. The rest, first time another unaligned force user ally would be reduced to 1% health. If Malicos is active, they recover 100% health and protection, gain damage immunity, take a bonus turn, and gain crit chance up, crit damage up, and offense up. While Malicos is active, whenever an enemy with less than 100% turn meter gains bonus turn meter, Malicos gains a stack of Edge of Madness, and that enemy takes true damage, which can't be evaded, and this can't defeat enemies. This is going to hurt some Jedi teams, Night Sisters, Troopers, lots of other teams. There's a lot of teams that have these turn meter mechanics. Malicos could be intense. This Omicron is going to be important, and all this re-emphasizes the point I was making a moment ago about how important a Syr Junda squad is going to be. It is the next phase of the game. We will be considering this one of the top squads in the game, which is already fairly clear if you've been paying attention to what's going on at the highest levels with Syr Junda, but this means everybody needs to be prioritizing these kinds of characters. The second unique Strength is Power, a Zeta and Omicron ability. Malicos' attacks can't be evaded. Enemies defeated by him can't be revived. He has 75% counter chance and 100% health steal, and at the start of the battle he gains 25% offense for each other unaligned force user. So the part here that I like the most is the counter chance, because that just means getting those stacks of Edge of Madness is going to be even easier, and the health steal, because already we know from the developer insights how important it is going to be to keep him healed because of the effects of Edge of Madness. The next portion, if the ally in the leader slot is unaligned force user, Malicos ignores taunt, important. While debuffed, he gains 50% health steal, so that just increases even more. And this next portion here, if Malicos has accuracy up or defense up, whenever Malicos uses an ability on his turn, he immediately uses the basic ability Dark Strike. And that paragraph right there is why I rewrite these kits to my satisfaction, because the way it is in this post here is a mess. Next portion, whenever an enemy cleanses a debuff inflicted by Malicos, he gains a stack of Edge of Madness until the end of the encounter. With the final Grand Arena Omicron, at the battle start, Malicos gains a stack of Edge of Madness, and all unaligned force users gain crit hit immunity. And that is already a very sneaky important condition of this Omicron, because if you remember from the first unique ability, that unique had a condition where you needed to have a stack of Edge of Madness in order to get that stacking effects from critical hits on the crit damage and offense up. So this Omicron ensures that you don't need to wait before you get these effects, that you start out the battle with these effects, which is important. If you remember the modding of a Syr Junda squad, you're modding those characters slow so that it means on counters. Before Malicos even gets to take his turn and set himself up with Edge of Madness, he's going to be countering with Edge of Madness and gaining those effects over time before he even goes. The next portion here, he has plus 100% max health and plus 50% mastery. Whenever he uses an ability during his turn, he immediately uses Dark Strike, the basic, and whenever he attacks out of turn, he gains protection up 20% stacking. Whenever any unaligned force user uses a special ability, Malicos assists. Okay, so now this is all starting to fall into place. This is going to be an important Omicron. When I was first reading through this kit, I kept wondering, where are the assists? Where are they coming from? And we finally see it here, particularly within the Omicron ability here. This is going to tie in very nicely with Sirjunda's Omicron ability. What Sirjunda's Omicron does, so let's pull this up. What her Grand Arena Omicron does on her leadership ability, each instance of damage any unaligned force user ally deals to an enemy, they gain 10% offense stacking. That means through all of those assists, through all those attacks out of turn that Malicos is doing, beyond all the effects from his own kit, he's gaining a ton of offense from Sirjunda's leadership. This was an Omicron I love so much, I put it on right away. Usually I don't do that. I give things a week or so I can see how a character looks without it. This Omicron has been one of the most no-brainer recent Omicrons we've had. So again, the Omicron from Malicos, that's adding Malicos assists whenever another unaligned force user uses a special ability. But that's just the start, because the next portion is the stacking protection up. You can think of that a little bit like how Nest works. This is another reason why you are going to want to mod Malicos to be slow, just like the rest of a Sirjunda squad. It means the more that he is slow, the more that he counters, the more that he assists, and the more he will get those stacks of Edge of Madness, meaning by the time he actually takes a turn, he's in a position to actually utilize the special abilities in a way that are productive. And so when you're taking his turns, you don't have to resort to the basic ability to set yourself up to use the specials. He's getting set up to use the specials from attacks out of turn. So when it comes to synergies, there's a couple things that I want to talk about here. One is the Lord Vader condition that they brought up as a possibility that you can use Malicos there. I don't think that's going to ultimately be desirable, and I think Maul will likely stay there. It's just because of what squad in the end are you going to want to use more. And the Sirjunda squad, I think, is going to way outperform what a Maul squad does. So taking Malicos off of a Sirjunda squad is going to be a net negative when compared to taking Maul off of a Maul squad and just losing a Maul squad altogether. This Sirjunda squad is just that much more important from what I'm seeing here. So they say it's a possibility. Maybe if you don't have Sirjunda ready, you can use Malicos there in the short term, but long term, that's not what you're going to want to do. Now with the unaligned force users, Sirjunda, Kelkestis, they're going to be go-tos. You're going to work with them. Obviously, Malicos is going to take one of the slots. Now we have two more slots to discuss. What I've been using primarily so far is Fulcrum. I think she's going to stay. She's pretty great on the squad. There's a lot of mechanics with the stacking offense that are going to work very well with her. She also takes some turns fairly frequently, even if you mod her to be slow. So that's going to help out Malicos a bit. What the other characters I've had on the existing squad so far have been Scavray or have been Kylo Ren. I don't have SOKR though, so some players may not want to use Kylo Ren. He's pretty good on the squad. You could look at using a Inquisitor's character or some of these other unaligned force users like Swallow if you don't have a Rey squad, but I think he's excellent under JTR. So Scavray, I think she's out. She's just not that good on the squad. She's good enough right now to hold a spot because of how she synergizes with Sirjunda. Since when she attacks, when she uses her specials, she's doing multiple instances of damages. So it means she's stacking offense faster than some other characters. Fulcrum's going to do that sufficiently. I think it's going to be far more important to put Kylo Ren here. Maybe SOKR players need to reconsider that. I'm not. I think it's going to be important to have a tank, and Kylo Ren is already pretty excellent on this squad, even though mine is gear 12. He's a character I've been wanting to have at Relics. It's just the way I play some of these characters, I have to delay. But this is a squad that I will be looking to prioritize, and it's something that you can just check out my Grand Arenas to see it in action while we prepare for the release of Malicos, just to see how effective it is at this level, or go to my older Grand Arena videos to see how effective it was when Ser June and Cal Kestis weren't even at 7 stars. When they were 3 stars, 4 stars, this squad was already taking out Relic squads. Now we're going to take a look at the gearing, and we do this at stages. We look at the gearing through gear 11, we'll look at gear 11 to gear 12, and then 12 to relics. And we don't always get to do this because usually these kit reveal and analysis videos have to be done before the character has been added to the game. But Malicos is in game right now, so we know his gear. And if you, like me, are going to unlock Malicos in the minimum 3 months, make sure you prepare in advance, because Malicos here is why I like to look at this kind of thing, even though things are easier than they ever were with the changes to the raid economy, to the gear economy because of the Krayt Dragon raid. So he is going to need 2 sets of Chirotechs at gear 8. That's a ton. This is extremely unusual. Usually we don't see 2 sets of Chiros below gear 10. That's where Iden has it. Some other characters have had 2 at gear 10. I think maybe Captain Rex. And since Malicos is an attacker, he's likely to be minimally effective at gear 8. He's going to be a character we want to get to high gear as quickly as possible in order for him to function. The characters who are least likely to function at low gear tend to be the attackers. He is also going to need 4 sets of Chiros total to gear 11. He needs another one here at gear 9, and at gear 10 he will need an additional Chirotech to get to gear 11, which again is not typical. Usually we get characters who need between 1 to 3 sets of Chiros to gear 11, and I have to go back and check, but I believe the first character who needed 4 sets of Chiros to gear 11 was part of the Cal Kestis requirements. At least not any non-GL character. Maybe one of the GLs does require 4 Chiros to gear 11, but most characters in the game are 1 to 3 Chiros to gear 11. That's what we expect, and in this situation we need to save up for 4. So that's 200 of each. Now to add to that, now because of how difficult it is to take him to gear 11, that staging ground that I like to do with my roster that you've guys seen me showcase in a lot of the free-to-play gearing portions at the end of these talk videos, what we see from gear 11 to gear 12 though is much more favorable. At gear 11 here we got an eyeball with a stun gun, a couple stun cuffs, 1 Mark IV back to gel. That's not that bad. That's a slightly more than average, but these days that's pretty much manageable with how the raid has changed things. Really, the Mark IV back to gel is the only piece that is going to be a little bit more of a, not even more of a pain, it's just a piece that we need to be much more careful with than we had to previously, because the old guild currency was one of the best ways to buy that particular piece. And then also the relic tier. This is also pretty beneficial. What we see here, we got armor plating, multi-tool bayonet, that's all cheap stuff. Really the Nubian scanner here is the only piece that is a little bit more frequently used. And then we have a HoloLens that is a little bit more desirable, another one of the Nubian scanners, and then a data pad, which is also used at a slightly more frequent rate, but we see no med packs, and we see no Mark 12 fusion furnaces. Those are some of the worst pieces to have to take characters to relics. So this is far more manageable. And of the Chirotech piece, we have the battle computer, which is the less in demand of the 2 Chirotech pieces. It's a little bit easier to passively accumulate the computer when compared to the prod. The Chiro prod we need at such extreme amount. We basically need double the Chiro prods that we need to a computer. So if you need like 800 Cairo computers, you need 1600 chiroprods. That's just to help visualize the quantity between the two. So the fact that this is a Cairo computer, much easier to swallow than some of the other relic characters that we've seen. And now for our wrap up, the free-to-play gearing of my roster. This is the gearing that we did on June 26th. So as I record this is basically exactly a month ago. We have, I think, 2, maybe 3 now gearing videos in between this, so we're getting closer and closer to being caught up. This is the Fury class interceptor right after that conquest had finished, so this ship had been taken up. We were just waiting for a gearing video, a gearing record to apply these ship Omega abilities. And then the big thing that's going on here is farming the Sirjunda, all the Calcestis requirement characters. So you can see the progress. Sirjunda here being taken up to 6 stars. Then the other characters, Tarful, Marin, those characters being brought up to 5 stars. And this being exactly a month ago, at this point, I'm almost to 7 stars. I'm about like 25-ish shards short of 7 stars. So it's going to take me just over a month to have moved from this 5-star point to 7 stars, just to give an idea of how long it's taken me to farm these characters up. Saw Ami, I'm really curious about. But anyway, I'm hitting those nodes. I'm doing the 25 and 50 crystal refreshes, so 3 times a day. And I'm gradually working on these Leviathan requirements here. A Sith Assassin, a Pilot for testing, Sortie because of the raid, taking her so that I can utilize her with Old Republic characters and change the modifier. HK-47 to give me some variable options with Dr. Afra, who I think I'm going to add another Omicron to. I gotta fix this camera. I could re-record, but we're not going to. Not for this portion of the video. Same thing with Bastila here. This is a character that I've held off putting relics on a long time, but now that we have her, we're going to take her up to Relic 3. We're doing things in stages as I try to work on accumulating the signal data. It's a month later and I'm still not even close. It's just a ton of signal data I needed to farm because I had just unlocked Sith Eternal Emperor prior to the Leviathan requirements being announced. I was kind of expecting the next Leia Organa to be announced prior to the Leviathan. They did it in a different order than what I was expecting. This is right after Rex was released. I take all my marquee characters up to gear 11 right away and make sure to always have gear on hand, so that is something that I can do. You'll see the same thing happen with Princess Nisa, Captain Drogon when he gets released. Helps me out a ton in Conquest. That Omicron I hold off, but I'm very curious about it. I actually just put it on, but I haven't even used it in Grand Arena yet. We'll be seeing it in the coming days in my Grand Arena. And showing them at this 3-star gear 11 level. Because I really like to show low gear viability. Which squads and characters can punch up, just like we've been seeing with Sirjunda, because she can punch up. I'm looking at some of these Zetas on some of these characters, trying to figure out which ones I want to boost up a little bit more. All these I'll probably get to at some point, but I'm holding off on. This is also, I think, prior to... Yeah, this is before I unlock Sith Eternal Emperor, so I'm keeping Zetas for Sith Eternal Emperor, so it's not really something where I want to be adding a bunch of relics. Before we get out of here, I do want to say a couple things on Leviathan. It's not something I'm going to put a separate video out about. It's not something that I think is really worthy of that kind of thing. I'm not really interested in making like an outrage video. You would think that CG would thoroughly test this type of stuff and not use the player base as a beta test group, especially a counter like the Profundity up against the Leviathan. At this point, there are changes they said they were going to make and that have not been implemented yet. I'm really going to withhold most of my judgment until we see what the Leviathan looks like after those changes have been put in place. I'm at this point not convinced they're going to really make that big of a difference, but we'll see. That's why I want to see it in action. In terms of people being upset, if you spent on it, I get it. Like the promise that CG makes is that if you pay for something, you will get something out of it, that you will get ahead, that you will get some sort of competitive advantage. And considering the costs involved and how it allows all of us to play and continue playing, that's a trade-off that makes sense. That is an expectation that I think is completely understandable by those who pay. But when something is bugged like this, I think it's okay to wait to see if they fix it. After they make these changes, and if it still doesn't really work well, and it's still not a strong counter, and still doesn't seem to be worth the money, then that's a completely different issue. But we'll wrap it up there. Several other videos to come. I think we'll make a short one, like on layout Organa requirements, just from my standpoint. I'm sure by now there's plenty of other videos on it, and Gerbil had a huge head start on everybody talking about this months ago. So it's not something I want to spend too much time on, but I think it's always fun to make a video like that, see where we land. And I don't remember what Gerbil... Like, I remember Gerbil's thought process in that video. I don't really remember too many of the specific characters he landed on. I'm sure Wicket was on there, but we've already seen some of that. So I think it'll be a fun little exercise to make a quick video during the week. But thank you for watching. Be excellent to each other, everyone. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.